This is The Cut, American Whiskey, Daily. A bourbon brand that spent years shipping its whiskey across the Atlantic just filed for permission to actually distill it. That's not a marketing move, it's a company deciding it wants to be a producer, not just a name on someone else's bottle. Here's what that tells you about where Kentucky bourbon is headed this fall. I'm John from Chasing the Unicorn podcast. Here's what moved today, August 10, 2026. Today's big move is Never Say Die, confirming its own distilled spirits plant license for a new brand home opening this fall in downtown Lexington. Here's why that's a bigger deal than it sounds. Never Say Die has always had an unusual story. The bourbon gets distilled in Kentucky, then shipped to Derbyshire, England to finish aging before it comes home to get bottled. Great story for a tasting room, but it also meant the company never actually distilled anything under its own roof. It sourced, shipped, and blended. That changes this fall. The new Lexington site, a two-story building on West Short Street, gets its own DSP license. That's the federal permission that separates a company that bottles whiskey from a company that makes it. Here's the signal underneath it. Lexington has had the history and the location for bourbon tourism forever, and it's mostly watched Louisville and Bardstown get the traffic. A licensed distillery downtown is a real bet that's about to change. And the practical payoff for you? The Lexington site will be the only place in the country selling the brand's UK-only bottles, barrel-strength bourbon and double ocean bourbon, without an international order. Now, today's Rickhouse. This is where we step back from one headline and look at what the whole industry is doing. And this week, it's a mixed signal. Because the same week Never Say Die is adding capacity, Wall Street is getting nervous about the biggest name in the business. Citi Research just opened a 90-day negative watch on Brown-Forman, the company behind Jack Daniel's and Woodford Reserve, 3 weeks ahead of its August 26 earnings. Citi's forecasting a 2.2% drop in organic sales, and the stock dipped the day the note went public. That's not a downgrade. It's Wall Street flagging a specific date and saying, watch this one closely. Put those two next to each other and you get the real shape of the industry right now. A craft-scale England aging brand is expanding into its own production for the first time. The category's largest publicly traded producer is bracing for a rough quarter. Growth at the edges, softness at the center. That's not contradiction, that's just where bourbon is in 2026. There's a third data point worth mentioning. Garrison Brothers, down in High, Texas, just built its first ever cask-strength single-barrel tier onto its flagship Laguna Madre release. A permanent structure, not a one-off. And Jep the Creed, the mother-daughter distillery in Shelbyville, marked 10 straight years of growing every kernel of corn it uses. Different scales, same theme. The producers who are thinking in structures, licenses, tiers, decade-long commitments, are the ones building something durable, while the biggest name on the shelf is the one getting the nervous phone calls. Now for today's first sip, a quick one, because it's exactly what made Never Say Die's news possible. So here's what it is. Every bottle on a shelf clears a federal checkpoint most drinkers never think about. The TTB, the Alcohol and Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau, regulates how whiskey gets made, taxed, and labeled. Before a new label can sell, the producer needs a COLA, a certificate of label approval, confirming the age statement and the source are accurate. A distilled spirits plant license is a different, deeper credential. It's federal permission to actually distill, not just bottle or blend somebody else's whiskey. That's the license Never Say Die just filed for in Lexington. Getting one is the line between a brand that finishes whiskey and a brand that makes it. What this changes, once you know that difference, you can read a press release like an insider. A brand announcing a new location is marketing. A brand announcing a DSP license is telling you it's about to become a real distillery. If you're logging pours in the Perfect Pour app, tag Never Say Die's current UK-only bottles now. Once that Lexington DSP starts running, you'll have a baseline to compare against the first true Kentucky distilled batch. It's available now at theperfectpourapp.com. Also in this window, one bottle worth knowing about this week. Garrison Brothers 2026 Laguna Madre, cask strength single barrel. It's the new tier I mentioned, bottled uncut at 135.4 proof after 4 years in New American Oak and 4 more in French Limousine. It sells only at the High Texas Distillery gates, and it's genuinely new ground for the brand, their first cask-strength single-barrel release ever. At $409.99, it's not a casual buy. But if you're near Texas Hill Country and you want to taste a distillery testing its own ceiling, this is the one. Watch, and if you're in range, go. So here's the one thing to take from all of this. Bourbon right now has 2 different clocks running at once. One where companies are building towards something, and one where a giant is bracing for a quarter that might not go its way. The bottles worth chasing aren't necessarily the biggest names. They're the ones being built by people who just told the government, in writing, that they're serious. That's The Cut. The full American whiskey industry brief is free every morning at chasingtheunicornpodcast.com. I'm John Schuster. Thanks for joining me. Your unicorn is out there.